going on, world? D100 TV, real conversation with real people. Today, my mind's on me with host, my sister, Queen Precious Rowe. Salute to you off top. But I'm gonna allow you to go ahead and introduce yourself formally to the world, Queen.
Well, my name is Precious. Right now, I'm in Tidewater, Virginia. I specialize in education and therapy. I have my bachelor's in education, my master's in ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis. I'm currently a school teacher and part-time doula and behavioral therapist, etc. So, yeah,
And how old are you again, if you don't mind me asking?
etc.
Huh?
Newly 25.
Yeah, that's fire. So we already know. Salute to you. You definitely getting it done.
Thank
Break
you.
down again real quick because I had to ask you like 3, 4 times because today we're talking about mental health. We talk about mental health in our community. We're talking about mental health a little bit in prison. We're talking about mental health with the
Okay.
younger generation today. But break down, read one more time for people like me. You say you got your MS, ABA, and just kind of give people a deeper look at what it allows you to do in that field and things of that nature.
Yes. So it kind of started, I'll be brief. My first year teaching, I had a pair of twins. They were having a really rough transition. They had a lot of severe behaviors, like tossing kids, students, chairs, desks. They were some pretty strong 5-year-olds. They had dealt with some PTSD, some traumas in the home. And it kind of led me into looking, and I had some behavioral therapists come from downtown. They were looking at the kids, trying to help us get a behavior plan together so we could get them regulated into the classroom to facilitate learning better. And I talked to the behavior therapist, and I was like, yo, what you do is really cool. I don't want to be in the classroom forever. What do you do? And she kind of showed me, she goes in, she observes, and basically, applied behavioral analysis, it is very different from the other parts of psychology and mental health, because a lot of them focus on diagnoses. Whereas in ABA, there's not a big focus on a diagnosis. It's not really looking at what you have or what you are. It's just looking at what you do and how we change it. So when I first started, it's mostly applied to autism. So if you have a child with autism, they're going to be in ABA therapy, so applied behavioral analysis therapy. But I didn't want to do that because that's what everybody does. I wanted to kind of course, branch out and do something different. But I wanted to apply it, if I do stay in the education field, which of course is always going to be a thing. I want to change the way that my biggest goal is changing the way that children go from when they get the kids that get put out of school, and there in a lot of schools they are mostly African American or minority children, changing, getting put out of school all the time in the school to prison pipeline, obviously changing, instead of sending you to an alternative school or keeping you at home for a year, let's change exactly what's being done in the classroom or at home so that we can get you facilitated in the classroom, because we see so many black kids, black and brown kids, that they don't reach even anywhere close to their full potential because they have trouble with behaviors. And that's not a reason to reach your full potential by any means. So I was always that good kid in school that followed all the rules, but I always hung with the kids that got in trouble so much. It still kind of so that's where the focus is.
You know what's crazy? Um, this is definitely not about me, but I'm gonna illustrate my a little piece of my story why it matches up to what you're saying. Um, growing up, I was gays, straight A student, B's, the I would get these out, etc. Never, I in high school they put me in an after school program where I had to stay back an hour later, and they would sit and do homework for me, and I have to go to college. It was an attempt. The counselors, the guidance counselors, etc., were Caucasian, and a lot of the issues had been related to. And I remember them getting frustrated because I explained to them what what I was feeling that they could understand, and it was an ill feeling. Eventually, I got sent to a shock treatment program, where it's like it's a 6 program at an Army National Guard. and to the middle, like, well, before, man, I be um she says, hey, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, your mic's muted. Wi-Fi is glitching. It's windy by me. Um, but the psychiatrist said, at that point, you probably, and I'm not saying that it would have changed things, but had it been diagnosed early on, had somebody identified, it might have been able to have been treated, and you might not have ended up in prison. And that was a real wake up call. I had a lot of different emotions because, and I'm gonna shut up. Up in a family with mother, salute my mother. My mother's an angel. The family didn't talk about they, a lot of black families, you know, people going on, and it just wasn't. I felt like looking back as a child, but I just feel like I didn't hook up with the right people, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. Because everything you said was spot on to my personal journey. So, and that's why I will talk today. Um, boom, crazy. Um, you said something. You said something that hit me earlier when we were talking, and you said there's not enough us in your field. Hard is it? Do you, somebody that you know saying things, whatever it is, to forward in that field? Is it a struggle? Is it welcome? Are you fight things within that field as you kind of in territory? Like what's that like?
Um, the biggest thing is exposure. And that's the biggest thing for any type of advancement or expansion, exposure. And so I didn't even know what ABA was. I'd never even heard about it. Maybe if you encounter, usually when you encounter autism, or if you have a child with very, very extreme behaviors, but this is a new field. ABA is totally new. It's really started accelerating kind of in the 90s and early 2000s. They started really doing hardcore practice probably around 70s and 80s. So this is the newest field in mental health. So there aren't a lot of um, counterparts that do look like me. And I'm not a stranger to it. I did go to PWI for undergrad, so I'm not used to being. I mean, I am used to being the only one in the room. But when you're working with mental health, it's a different conversation. When you, a lot of times, especially nowadays, we're getting a lot more talk about how in the mental health and in the medical field, Black voices aren't heard. When we're expected to be able to take on more pain and take on more situations and traumas and things of that nature and not feel or say much about it. And so when I go into a room and I have to give my professional opinion or do any kind of consulting or any kind of work of that nature, oh, she's new or she's young, she doesn't really know. But really, a lot of times you can't make a lot of judgments of when you do behavior and when you're talking about how a person lives and the kind of things that they do, you have to take account in background and culture. It's everything. You can't just look at what somebody's doing. You have to look at where they come from, where they live, who they live with, who they're around, what's the family history, what is their personal history. And
Right.
our culture as people, that's just a whole different layer if you take away mental health. And then when you add mental health, that's a totally different layer of conversation. So it is difficult sometimes kind of getting other cultures to kind of hone in on what really is truly important when focusing on behavior, because it's not all happy smiles when we change behavior. Because when we're working with kids or adults, they still have to go home back to that environment that cultivated the original behaviors. So hope we get him back soon.
I'm getting up and moving for this. I'm getting up and going over here because we live. This is a good conversation, and I got questions. Matter of fact,
See,
we going all the way. We going by the router. We keeping it
let's
100 on 100 TV.
period.
We are. We not playing no game. I'm gonna tell you what I've experienced is I'm in the dark with this podcast. Whenever it's a fire interview or fire content, it never fails. But anyways, no, because I was asking that question. It's almost like in a lot of ways, I don't see you obviously as such, but in a lot of people's eyes, you're a triple minority in this field
Yes.
because you're black, you're a woman, and you're 25. Hey, look, I feel like, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way. I feel like we've been dealing with the opposition of being black since we're born, a lot of times. So, unfortunately, it's not that we become used to it, or I don't want to say numb to it, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's a part of life, unfortunately. Um, I cannot relate to being a woman, but I have said when T Spills was up here, I believe that the black woman is the most targeted. Uh, I just feel like y'all get it the most, even from us. And I apologize to her as I apologize to you, and I'll continue to do so. Because we got to do better as black men. But I will say this: what I can't relate to, on top of that, is being 25 and somebody that's been in this industry for 10 years sees this new voice or hears this new voice, sees these new ideas, coming about from a different place that they haven't seen before. And then I think about Blackish and Anthony Anderson. How he used to be in front of the boardroom and he's trying to pitch these urban ideas. And I don't even like, well, maybe the word urban, maybe that's another show, but that's right. And
Yeah.
they don't get it, but they want to get it. That you got the token guy in the room that's then you got maybe somebody that does, but the majority of the room there's no connection, and there's still and I just think about moments like that might
Yes. That's why I always tell, my friends, my peers, and classmates, anybody I come across, it's extremely important not to chase the salary, but to chase the purpose, chase the vision, find that, because chasing salary will get you in those rooms in front of people that maybe they're paid to listen to you give those kind of presentations, but sometimes you got to hit the ground running, kind of in the trenches, and you kind of got to see, you got to help your own backyard, your own community. Everything starts at home.
right. Let me ask you this. Um, you've been up here before. We talked about Jefferson Ellie. Sure you know others that have been incarcerated, etc. What are your thoughts? Maybe even having conversations with me. What you know what I'm saying? I talk about therapy and stuff like that up here, but what are your thoughts when it comes to what you're seeing in relations to mental health and people, or whether adults or juvenile offenders, offenders under their terms? Um, what do you see as far, because there is a breakdown. There's some, this is what I don't understand. I'm gonna let you, but they said over 70% of the people rated either have known or undiagnosed mental health issues. Right? I believe that. I did 17 years. I believe that if you don't have that coming in, you're definitely probably gonna have it coming out because PTSD is real and it's kind of hard not to get that in the environment, right? Um, I said it doesn't make sense when statistics like that are out, but the mental health in prison is a joke. I feel like there should be mental health assessments 6 months from the door and 6 months after that individual leaves out. That's something that I'm really big on. I don't
At minimum.
right, but what are your whole ideas? Speak on something that you've seen or witnessed or experienced, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to talk about it broad. But what are your thoughts about mental health and prison, or mental health and incarceration, how it relates, etc.?
Ooh, that's that's a big one. Just because I always look at things from a historical standpoint. And so we already have, like you said, being black does start from birth. And that's why I like studying birth because it really starts in the womb, to be honest. So dealing with ancestral situations, dealing with we're already carrying from ancestral points, and then now you're born here and now you have, it depends on what you're born into, what your family's dealing with, your environment is dealing with, and then you're dealing with the things that you encounter that end up getting incarcerated. And then when you are incarcerated, it's disgusting, the total disregard for the brain. And we're supposed to help rehabilitate people that have been away for how long, and there's so much going on out here. Is it's so overwhelming. For I'm overwhelmed here and I've been here, so it's, there definitely is a huge need to address more mental health for those who've been incarcerated. But like you said, so many people that are, it's no surprise, so many people that are do have mental health issues that
Yeah,
definitely should have been addressed at some point before incarceration.
yeah. It's. I know it. Well, we just you spoke on it at the top of the interview. Prison, school to prison pipeline behavior is it goes gets unchecked, unidentified. Usually leads to a kid getting in trouble. It does time in prison, comes home, can't reacclimate back to society, doesn't have the proper support, mental health issues or elevate because they have symptoms that turn into other things, or ailments, and then a lot of times they end up back in prison. There's a lot of people that are in the hood. What's crazy, and I don't know. Maybe it wasn't like this for you growing up, but in the hood for me growing up in Chicago, if somebody angry, they was just they it that's just how he, oh no, that's just normal, that's just Joe, he's just always angry. Nobody ever had the conversation and said, well, why is he angry? Oh, he's brother and he's dealing with trauma, he hasn't been able to talk about it, it hasn't been addressed. You know what I'm saying? Did you grow up like that, or what do
It's definitely something that's very common in black households and black communities where that, and it grinds my gears. That's just how they are. That's just how I am. Because like you said, no one ever really asks why, but even asking why, nobody really sticks around to help move past that issue. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're in the center of trauma, when you're in the center of whatever mental health issue or whatever you're dealing or coping with, if you're in the middle of a situation, I like to see it as a car. If somebody scratches your car, you can't see it sitting on the inside. The people around the car can see it. And so, when you're in the middle of a situation, you can't always see the way that you're acting or how something has affected you. And so, I feel like a lot of times in our community, it's not a, oh, something's wrong, let's kind of see what's going on. It's more of a, oh, such and such, they ain't acting right. They crazy. They always doing this or they always doing that. It's talked about, but it's not addressed within. So, that's a huge part of it. And I also think that the anger piece, think about how much people are dealing with, and then people have families, they have kids, they have so much going on. There's lack, lack, LACK. is a huge part of that, whether it's a lack in finances, lack of resources, lack of emotional intelligence. There's a huge lack somewhere. And so you're dealing with day to day. And then on top of that, you want to add traumatic experiences to it. It's insane.
What do you tell the parent of a child that is in issues? How do you make them comfortable? Because a lot of parents aren't comfortable. Some parents may feel like they haven't done their job or somebody's trying to step in. Some parents may feel like mental health professionals are just know-it-alls and read out of books. The reason I say this is because you probably even heard this, or maybe you're like me. I've had conversations where I've tried to introduce therapy to people, and the responses I get back, like, life. I don't need, or you know what I'm saying. So, but how do you deal with situations like that, especially because again, in our community, but in all communities, I think a lot of times there's a stigma attached to mental health and getting help, seeking assistance, stuff like that.
It's definitely a lot of pride, but it's also checking the ego too. It's definitely checking the ego, which is something you have to kill the ego every day. That's not something you do one time. You go to therapy for a year. You have to check the ego every day when you wake up in the morning. But addressing parents, it's a very delicate situation. Addressing anybody, I always want you kind of put yourself in a position to be helped. That's what I like to do. So I'm having a hard time. I need your help. Can you give me some insight on what's does this happen at home? Making the parent feel more comfortable by kind of giving them a sense of control. Like, I just met this kid. Can you give me some insight on what's going on? I'm not having the best time. Can you give me some help here? And then when they kind of give you something, if they give you something, time, but also showing that you're there. Like, don't just meet one time, don't just text or call one time, but make yourself a presence. It doesn't have to be every day. If there's a little league game, go. It doesn't hurt. Just little stuff like that to show the parents, because sometimes they're dealing with a whole lot of other stuff that has nothing to do with math homework. So,
And I would say, and I'm gonna interject briefly.
mm,
Once I feel like the parents understand that you're supporting the child, it's indirectly it's supporting them as well. And I'm sure because you're interacting with their child, there's plenty of moments where the parent might start unloading some baggage or frustrated. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, because I know you on a personal level, I know you care about people. I know you're not going to be like, well, I'm not your, and you go into that mode with them. I think once those connections are made, that's when the real work can be done. You know what I'm saying?
yes, self care is super important for people like me that just like to take on those kind of things.
Talk about self care.
Oh,
Care too, but I know you can uh, talk about it. Because I don't people to the teacher, anybody that's a teacher, anybody leader, anybody that's a counselor, therapist, anybody serving in the church, anybody that is always giving and out. And I know exactly if you're watching this and you're these people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Listen up to this real quick. Her perspective. I'm gonna give my little 2 cents, but talk about self care real quick, especially in our community and why we got to get better at it.
self care for me, the biggest part, it just depends on, like I said, your environment, with the things you're dealing with. For me, the hugest part of self care are boundaries. What you can take from people, what you can give to people, boundaries. If you need space, I think we have a hard time, either we don't want to give anything to anybody or we give too much. And finding that healthy balance is so, so important. And I know a lot of time self care is starting to be a little bit commercialized, so to speak, where we see commercials and now self care is like getting your nails done and going to the salon. And that is great too. Don't get me wrong. Taking care of your physical is super important because that's where you live. But I think the biggest part of self care is self love. And when you realize that loving yourself means that you're not just taking care of your body, it's not just going to the gym and eating right. It's how you deal with your personal relationships, it's how you deal with your professional relationships. And to me, self care is doing anything to make your mind clear. And self love is doing things to make your heart clear. If you can't sleep at night, if you carrying a lot of stuff, you're not properly taking care of yourself. And so boundaries aren't there to keep people out. Boundaries are just showing people this is where you can go and this is where you can leave. This is how you can come.
I like that. I think,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna speak from this. No, I'm gonna speak from to the givers, to the ones that are always pouring out, pouring out, pouring out. A lot of times we feel like we're not getting poured back into. You know what I'm saying? We get burnt out. So it's crazy. We're the ones that usually over care for everybody around us and don't care enough about ourselves. Causes, again, here comes these symptoms and ailments attached to us not taking care of ourselves. That can turn to physical things. You can end up in the hospital with stress kills and different things that take you down. It can have mental health issues because stress, can affect. So take care of yourself. And I understand you're a teacher. I understand your need and your father or mother or sister. I understand this, but if you don't take care of yourself, ultimately you won't be able to take care of those. That, you know, in
Mm-hmm.
order, you still need to take care of yourself. And we got to get better. I want to say this. You mentioned the nails. Another thing we do, a lot of us we do because a lot we got poor eating habits. We go to the gas station and get us some chips, or and when we stress, we start stress eating, or we start smoking. A lot of times, if we the perspective and went to healthier habits, you would see some of these ailments go away if you started to conquer. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe I'm gonna say combat. You know what I'm saying? The negative feelings, man. One thing I started doing when I feel down, I go to the park for an hour. Put my phone on do not disturb, music on, let the sun hit me, walk laps, and I kind of just breathe. So whatever y'all got to do, man, so you can have your breathing moment, you need those, your rest moment, do that for real. Self care is key. Um, Question: what do you say to the high schooler that internally is screaming for help, needs help, is maybe suicidal, maybe depressed, maybe, and I don't know, whatever they're feeling that high schoolers feel in 2022, it seems like a lot of time. But yet, maybe growing up in the African American community where if you ask for help or you go to the guidance counselor or the therapist, on site therapist, because I heard they got some of those things going on in certain school districts, you looked at as a crazy kid. You don't want that. You know what I'm saying? What do you say to somebody that's kind of caught? Because I remember when I was young, in hindsight, in high school, I didn't really understand counseling and all that, but that's what I was asking for. I didn't know what I was asking. But there was a part of me when it finally presented itself in the form of a behavioral program where counseling was attached to it. I was angry because I didn't get put there by my choice at that time. I was put there by them, and it was just awkward and all. But what do you say to the high schooler that's dealing with?
Yes, definitely. When I was mentoring in school, I know the biggest thing I used to tell the girls group that I worked with, living living a long, natural, healthy life is cool. Living out your life is cool. And we have to make decisions that allow us to live a long, healthy life. So obviously things happen and things are cut short whenever they are, but we have to do our part. And so a lot of times I tell them find one person who can, and find one person who will. Find a person in your life who can and who will. Don't just find somebody to talk to that's just gonna, oh yeah, be like that sometimes. Oh, that's crazy. No, find somebody who can and who will. Whether they're at school, church, down the street, where if it's one of your buddies, but find somebody who, if something is not going right with you, they're gonna check.
Yeah,
And that makes all of the difference because we have to bring back a sense of community. We have to bring back a sense of checking on each other in a sense of these are the people that look out for me. These are the people that I look out for. And at that age, we're always looking at what's cool. We're looking at what helps us to fit in. And we don't want to be left out of certain things and certain norms living a full healthy life is cool. So if you need to talk to somebody or if you need help of any sort, why not do it now? Why wait until you're working every day 40 hours? Why wait until you have people to take care of and you have kids and you there's so many other stressors? Take care of it now.
Yeah, that sense of community and support is key, man. Shout out
Mm.
to Nate. I met him while I was locked up. He's a stand up dude. I swear to you, he sends me texts and messages 15 times a day. And I'm saying this up here. He knows my personality. It used to be I appreciated it, but I was just like overwhelmed. But I started noticing, I was like, damn, he's consistent with it. And then I started noticing when I was down, oh, here comes a funny meme he done sent. Or when I and we didn't even talk. You know what I'm saying? So I started to appreciate these things and always appreciated my brother, but I'm just an introvert and I put myself on an island sometimes, which a lot of us, if we're constantly pouring out and we can do that, we like to do. Um, but shout out to him, man. If you're one of those people that's capable, that's in, that you in a good spot, man, check on your people. Even if you're not, sometimes checking on your people is checking on yourself. Like real talk. Man, I've had conversations where I think I'm checking on a friend and they ended up checking on me. So that sense of community is definitely major. Um, Man, I wanna shift it for a second. I want to go into a little bit more about your story, your background, your motivation, and stuff like that. Because you said you got like 70 titles. Doula sticks out to me. I didn't know what a doula was. Till my biological mother was like, she was a doula. Might still be. I don't know. And she helped in a crazy amount of births. Right. I didn't know what a doula was. So hey, shout out to that. Shout out to the doulas. The
Period.
A joint is crazy. Um, you got so many talents. It seems like you're in different lanes, though you're kind of still in a certain wheelhouse or arena. But what inspires you? What motivates you? Why did you go to that lane in the mental health? Why did you go for the MSABA? Why do you work with childbirth stuff like that? Why is that so an important thing for you?
Mm. Being a person that looks everywhere and sees needs all over the place. Everybody just seeing so many needs, whether it be familial needs, educational, therapeutic needs. Um, I just want to learn and know as much as possible so that I can do as much as possible for others. Um, but the biggest thing, my biggest inspiration was just growing up and seeing how so many of my own family, like there's so many people that are so talented and so many people that have, you know, so much potential, and just seeing that my friends, like so many different black households and black families that have so much, and just wanting to be able to do more to help them do more. I think that's a huge part of it. None of what I really want is for me. I just want to be at a place where I can see other Black women win, Black people in general, but especially Black women. Seeing what it's like to kind of take the educational route and kind of be the good girl, so to speak, that nobody really thinks that you ever need any help. Nobody ever really thinks that you have a whole lot going on or that you ever really get into anything that you need help getting out of. And so you kind of learn to just, okay, I'm going to thug it out on my own. And what happens is it leads to you kind of taking care of people, whether it's their emotional, mental needs, whatever it is. I want to do so much more so that I can show Black people how to better take care of themselves. The world is ours, and but we can't take it if we don't know that it's ours, and we can't take it if we don't know how to take care of ourselves.
That's fire. That's most people. Your perspective that's all true. Is it overwhelming? I ask that because I remember having conversations uh, with my brother, with good old Jefferson Ellie, and I remember telling him one time, I don't know if I said I wish I was stupid or I wish I was ignorant, and saying it. I wasn't saying it like I think I'm better than anyone. It's
Right.
just that I feel like once I opened and I started learning and seeing, understanding what was going on, it,
Mm-hmm.
it became overwhelming because here I feel like I can fix, I can teach, I can inspire. Does it overwhelming, or you kind of just you're at peace with that process, or maybe you don't see it. I don't know how you see
I mean, ignorance definitely is bliss, but it definitely comes with a different level of responsibility, so to speak. It comes to whom much is given, much is certainly required, and it is frustrating at times. It's definitely frustrating. It's oftentimes exhausting, but I think the biggest thing is kind of seeing you have to have your own sense of vision. You have to know what you want and what you're working towards, and you have to be able to kind of process what it is exactly that you want. So it's a lot of spending time with yourself. You can't help anybody without being able to look inside and see why you do the things you do, why you are the way you are, and what do you want to change and make better. So,
where do you see mental health going for our community in the future? Do you think it's going in the right direction? Because it's being talked a lot more. I mentioned when we were on the phone, Charlemagne, the guy I always hear on the radio. I listen to Breakfast Club. He's having a mental health is mental wealth expo. So now I want to do something. I want to be a copycat and doing at the school. People are writing books. Celebrities are coming out because everybody pays attention to the celebrity. Um, but maybe these are good things. But do you think we're going in the right direction, or do you think still a lot more work needs to be done?
uh, the the dilemma that I always run into is that we are in the information and technology age, and so a lot of our exposure is definitely coming from technology, coming from social media, coming from the internet. Like the things that we're doing right now is definitely going to help a whole lot of people. At the same time, we run into that dilemma where we're learning a lot from our phones, but we spend too much time on our phones and it's not natural. The half of the things that we're doing, working 50, 60 hours a week, a lot of this isn't natural. We're not put here for a lot of these things. And so now we're trying to figure out how to regulate natural bodies while doing, so to speak, physically unnatural things. And while social media is extremely helpful, mental health is starting to become a little, I don't want to say cliche, but it is becoming a little commercialized where, oh, focus on your mental health or go to therapy. But we're not really talking about mental health. Doesn't have to be sitting in front of a therapist. It could just be having a hard conversation, either with yourself or with somebody else. And so when we deal with that, we kind of learn how to deal with other things as well. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I do think there's a lot of other work to be done. But I think we're off to a good start.
I want to go here with it. Relationships and mental health. A lot of uh, teeth, teeth. But look, toxicity.
There it is.
That word, everybody,
That
city
word.
girls, Glorilla. Uh, I don't know what it's all over the place, right? Um, mental health to me is connected to toxicity. Um, to have some toxic ways. And it's still for me. That's one of the reasons for me as a married man, mental health became important because I didn't want to bring that into this. And still every day, it's a fight every day because you I've been moving for such as for so long, blah blah. And for me, mental health is definitely attached to that. What is
Mhm.
your idea of mental health when it comes to relationships? What's going on? And there was like three major. I'm gonna say major because they're all stars. Three major divorces this week. Tom Bree and Miguel. Right? There's a lot of thing, and then you hear people. I'm not gonna get into retrograde, and I don't even know what that's. But anyway, I don't know. You look at you like, but what are your thoughts on mental health, relationships, or whatever you want to in? Because there's a lot going on with that, especially
Ooh, individuality. Individuality. I cannot express it enough. And I learned that the hard headed way. Individuality. I know that a lot of times when we don't address our mental health, when we don't address our own pattern of behaviors, um, like you said, you didn't want to bring certain things into a new life with somebody else, because she has her own things that she's also carrying as well. That is huge. And I think that if we thought like that a lot more, it would check those codependency tendencies. Um, Toxicity, that word, we throw it around. Like you said, the city girls, like the whole movement. I think right now we're in an age where I think we just want to entertain and be entertained. Like I don't really see a whole lot of purpose moving right now. And so that toxicity thing, oh, he toxic or she, oh, that's so toxic. Da, 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 da. And I think instead of calling it toxic, we may just need to address it as right or wrong. We've moved away from those words in a huge way. And like I said, individuality is big because you have to have that relationship with yourself. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to know yourself and know what tendencies you have. When you meet somebody, you have to be able to tell them, okay, these are the great things and these are the things we're still working on, and heavy on still working on, like we talked about earlier, addressing these things every day. You're never going to wake up completely finished, perfect, 100%. It's something that you have to work on every day. And mental health plays a huge role, especially in Black relationships. Um, just dealing with day to day life, dealing with traumas, dealing with past histories, past relationships, and it makes trust a war instead of making trust a conversation.
trust is hard, and I don't
It
think
is.
it's already hard. And then you ask this young lady that's 23 that watched her mother get cheated on her by her father or beat up, you know what I'm saying, abused, and it's hard to trust the individual. There's triggers, there's things that remind you, that your
Mhm.
mind on you, or for the individual, the 33-year-old man that's out there doing everything he shouldn't be doing in the streets. We're gonna keep it fair. And then the minute his old lady don't answer the phone, he get to freaking out. She's not doing nothing, but it's his mind tricks on. We ain't gonna go. That's a whole nother.
That's a whole different, that's the whole narcissistic thing. We ain't got to go there today.
But you said something key. I want to touch on this real quick. You said we got to get terms because sometimes certain terms we use it lessens the brunt of what's going on
Mhm.
that's being committed. When you use toxic, it almost becomes like a meme or humorous or whatever. Um, why do you think? Because I was listening to Young Jock this morning on the radio, and he was this week. Young lady called in. She said she was with a good dude. He gave her everything that financial stability, home, all the things that she wanted. But for some reason, she was getting ready to break up with him for some reason because she still liked, for the sake of this conversation, the toxic dude. And these were her terms. Why do you think that happens? And it doesn't always happen with the women. Sometimes the guys go looking for the
Yeah.
toxic type. Like, oh, she loved me and she done hit him upside the head with a frying pan, but it's all good. They in the house that night. We've seen things like that growing up. But why do you think people look for that sometimes?
A lot of times that's directly related to, I don't want to say just parental. We don't want to throw like the mommy and daddy issues thing out there, but it directly points to familial history, and past relationships. And a lot of times we're conditioned because Black people feel like we have everything has to be hard. You know, oh, you can't acquire wealth, or you can't acquire education and knowledge, or you can't acquire anything in life without everything being so hard and difficult. Somebody has to literally crash into my car to show me they love me. Like it's unreal, and that is a huge mental health thing as well that needs to be addressed. But it's also that's an internal thing. We can't look for people to do the most and do negative things to show us they love us, which is huge because you have to be able to show yourself you love yourself. And a lot of times, like even the trust part of things, a lot of times we're looking to be able to trust somebody, but you kind of have to be able to trust yourself to maneuver yourself when things aren't going the way they should go. So instead of looking at, oh, I can't trust this person, or I feel like they're too toxic or this or that, a lot of we've moved away from the self accountability and relationships. And so we're only looking at the other person, and we're not looking at what we could be doing better either for that person or for ourselves. And so when we encounter this, oh, I got a great, the whole, oh, he's boring, or he's a square. I need somebody with edge. And I used to definitely think like that. It's for the birds and the bees. It's overrated, because you find out that those people operate in hurt, and you want that kind of love because you're hurt too. When you start healing, you don't want that crazy stuff. You don't have time for it.
Right. That's major. Hey, we might gotta do a whole joint on that on stocks. That might be one. Um, getting ready to wrap this up, right? You had a lot of your perspective, your truth. But I want to ask you this: 5 years from now, Precious Rowe, pose you anybody. Again, it's an honor to have you up here. You know, some guests I don't know. Some guests I've met through other people. Some guests I do. I consider you family because you've been in my home. You met my, you know. So, anybody that's been around you, not to put you on the spot, but you bright, you a shining star. You know, I know that in the field that you in, you working. I know that you fighting fires and pushing forward, and you doing the work that needs to be done, and probably doing a whole lot of extra work on top of that. Um, but you, 5 years from now, because you're only 25, when you're 30, the big 30, whoo, what, how do you envision? Don't get start sweating, but life, like whether it's on your in a professional level, personal level, like where are you pushing? You know, what are you fighting for? What are some of your goals? 5 years, maybe you want to accomplish in three. What's your future looking like?
I definitely want to take um, my passion for mental health and the therapy field and shift it to more of a global aspect. I definitely want to pursue journalism and do this thing on the big screen.
That would be fire.
Absolutely.
Do it. Don't forget us when we get up there.
Period.
um, real talk. We need to talk more about mental health in our community. We need to have these conversations. Those of us that are brave enough to tell our stories about maybe the battles that we fight every day need to, because that could possibly motivate and inspire somebody to keep fighting forward. In 2017, I lost my younger brother to suicide. Um, Anybody that's dealing with those thoughts, talk to, don't think for 1 second like what happened. No matter if you feel like you messed up, whatever it is, whatever thought you feel like you can't get back from, you already made it. I keep saying it. I heard somebody else, DJ Ghost. I like to cite everybody that says it, says what they say. He said, despite what you're feeling, you've already made it through 100% of your worst days. So you're undefeated. You just got to do um, fresh words to the world. Any thoughts? Maybe let people already reach. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to say bye. The floor is yours.
I just want to say, for everyone that's on the grind, or even if you're not on the grind yet, you're still trying to find your way and figure things out. Every day is a new chance to figure things out. Every day is a new chance to get started. And getting started is definitely the first step to getting it done. So thank you, Life, for having
I'm about to steal that.
me.
Getting started is the first, getting it done. And that's all I'm gonna say. The next time, y'all, D100 TV. Thank you. Glad to have you up here. Got to have you. That was already your second time. I thank you. I thank you leading everybody else. So a couple of good back up here. They're getting up here soon. But anytime, got to. So salute to you. Salute to anybody that's watching. About health, prison, anything real. Maybe you want to get up here. Don't hesitate to follow me on IG. Reach out. And follow and subscribe here so you know when we're going live and part of the